Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can even earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Spotify for Podcasters has made our podcasting process so much easier and even has options like Q&As and polls so we can engage with listeners. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started.
Join me, 48 Hours correspondent Erin Moriarty, on my podcast, My Life of Crime, as I take on true crime investigations like no other. This season, I'm looking into the labyrinth of crime and secrets within families. I'm cutting straight to the evidence and talking to the people directly involved, including investigators and the families of victims. Listen to My Life of Crime with Erin Moriarty wherever you get your podcasts.
Inspired by the life of the savvy and ambitious Colombian businesswoman Griselda Blanco comes a new Netflix original limited series. Griselda tells the story of a devoted mother who, with her lethal blend of charm and relentless savagery, creates one of the most powerful cartels in history. Witness Sofia Vergara's captivating transformation into the godmother of the underworld. Griselda, streaming January 25th, only on Netflix.
The following contains descriptions of physical violence, sexual violence, and graphic descriptions of autopsies. Hey listeners, welcome to a special bonus episode of TGIC Podcast. I'm Jillian.
And I'm Izzy.
And today, why you look so excited?
I don't know, I'm excited.
So today I'm going to be kind of like leading this mini episode about the disappearance of Bobby Dunbar. So this is actually one of like the first cases that really perplexed me, I'd say.
Oh, I like that word.
Thank you. I actually have like a good story on this. When I was in 8th grade, I came home from school one day and I was...
Stopped.
No, it didn't. Oh, no, it didn't. Full of shit. Sorry, we've been having tech issues like all afternoon, and Izzy just like insisted it stopped even though it didn't stop.
I thought it stopped.
Okay, anyway, back to my story time. When I was in 8th grade, I used to like go on BuzzFeed a lot. Like I had the app downloaded, and so I used to just like kind of futz around and do like click quizzes or read like the listicles and all that.
I loved BuzzFeed. Like all the like shopping lists too.
I know. I was like really into BuzzFeed. So I was on BuzzFeed one day when I discovered BuzzFeed Unsolved. And so that's when I started watching the videos. And the first one I clicked on was the disappearance of Bobby Dunbar. And I watched this video. I actually fell asleep halfway through because I was real tired. But then when I woke back up, I was like, this video is still playing. And so I like went and rewatched it. And I was like, holy shit, that's cray cray. And so here we are. I think it's been 4 years now.
Whoa.
I know. I don't remember when I was in 8th grade. 4 years?
Yeah.
4 years sound right?
4 years.
So yeah, I'm gonna get started with this episode now. I'm kind of excited. I'm gonna kind of talk through that case, and then Izzy is here for real-time reactions. Is that fun?
That is fun. I'm excited.
Okay.
This is like, if anybody remembers a Supernatural Sunday episode that I did.
It was
Some
Someday.
Days. Supernatural Some Days episode I did like months and months ago. This is Jillian's riff. This is her. This is her time to shine.
Yeah, okay. So, some background. Robert Clarence, a.k.a. Bobby Dunbar, he was born on May 23rd, 1908 in Opelousas. I meant to look up how you say that, but I think I got Opelousas.
You got it. That's good.
Opelousas, Louisiana. His parents were Leslie and Percy Dunbar, and he was their oldest son. So there's not really any other background information beyond this, just because, you know, he was 4 and it was also like 1912 or whatever.
Yeah.
So like there's not a lot out there for little Bobby Dunbar.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to start with the timeline. So August 23rd, 1912. Bobby, who was 4 at the time, went with his family and some family friends, and they were all staying in their family cabin in Swayze Lake, Louisiana. So the lake was actually more of like a swampy forest. It like literally they were describing it like the fucking Shrek swamp. They were like, yeah, it's a lake, and I'm like, oh, that sounds nice. And then like the article or whatever I was reading, it was like, oh yeah, but it was really just a heavily forested swamp. I was like, awesome. So yeah.
So nice.
Very Shrek-like.
It's giving Shrek.
That morning, Percy, who is Bobby's father, he had to leave because of work. Bobby was like really pissed off about this and threw himself a little temper tantrum. Actually, it was like so bad to the point where he broke the little strap on his straw hat. He was so angry.
Why is that just a detail added in here?
Because it's relevant later that his strap on his hat was broken.
Okay.
And it's because he was throwing a temper tantrum. Anyway, after his tantrum, he asked if he could go shoot garfish. I can't take you seriously. So funny. I don't know what a garfish is. Anyway.
This kid is 4. He's like, Daddy, can I go shoot garfish?
Okay.
His little hat's broken.
Anyway, he was really upset and he wanted to go shoot garfish with his family friend named Paul Mizzy. So Paul, at home, he often took Bobby horseback riding, so his mom totally trusted Bobby to go with him, and the other boys ended up joining the group too. So at around lunchtime, this is when the details kind of start getting a little bit confusing. It was lunchtime, so they were all called back by Leslie to come back to like the camp area. Mm-hmm. And Paul, who was the family friend, he actually recalls carrying Alonzo, who was Bobby's brother, back on his shoulders. And he actually remembered sharing this like joking exchange thing with Bobby. He called him like heavy or something, which low-key seems really rude.
Yeah, that is rude.
But basically he said something, it was along the lines of like Bobby was walking in front of him and he was like, oh, if you don't get out of the way, Happy, I'll run you over. And then Bobby was like, you ain't bigger than me or something. Anyway, so they remember having this little interaction. But then when they returned back to the camp, Leslie realized that Bobby was no longer with them, and she started freaking out, and she actually passed out because she was so freaked out.
Which makes sense. I mean, it's a 4-year-old kid.
Yeah, he just disappeared, and I'm kind of confused at what point he did disappear.
No, because wasn't he standing in front of them, too?
Well, no, because then he moved behind them.
Oh, yeah,
he was like, I was all knock you over. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, all afternoon, they were searching and calling out for Bobby. And they looked all around the campsite. They checked the wagon trail to see if Bobby had tried to follow his father, who had gone to work. And they actually found Percy returning while they were on this trail. And he, too, began panicking about the fact that Bobby was gone. And he ran back to camp trying to help find him. So that night, they ended up using dynamite to blast the lake. And why are you laughing at that?
Dynamite?
I mean, what else are they going to use?
I don't know, but, like, I don't know what it is. But the fact that, like, I'm not being insensitive. I seriously, like, I just could not even imagine, like, them just being like, oh my god, well, wouldn't that destroy evidence?
No, that's what I was just thinking. Doesn't that seem kind of stupid?
Yeah, like, let's blow up the lake and see what's at the bottom. Like, I don't know. Like, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, but you know what? That's what they did. They used dynamite to blast the lake, and then they also dredged the bottom for any evidence, but there was no trace of Bobby. On August 24th of 1912, which is the following day, over 500 men had joined the search efforts, and people started checking like the hidden coves around the lake, but the only corpse that they were able to find was a dead deer.
Oh.
People suggested that he could have been attacked by an animal, and it actually got like so extreme to the point where they started cutting alligators open to check for Bobby.
Oh my god.
Which also, like, I would be scared to cut an alligator open.
No, well, they would kill it first.
I mean, yeah, but I'd be scared to kill an alligator.
Yeah, true.
Wouldn't you? Like,
but I mean, this is like 1912. Like, they got no fear.
I apparently not.
Like, they're probably cutting up alligators on a daily for food.
Also, like, here's my other thing. If they're cutting him open to check for Bobby, this is not like a Pinocchio whale situation. Like, he's not going to be whole in there. He would have been chewed up, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to know, like, the difference between, like, chewed up, like, other meat and chewed up little boy meat. Right?
That's true.
Like, if they cut open an alligator, they're not going to be like, oh, it's Bobby. Like, right?
But if they find, like, a hand or a nose or...
I feel like that all gets chewed up, like, with the choppers.
Yeah, I don't know. Depends on how hungry he was. Like,
I guess.
Like, chewing thoroughly.
They also tested for how long a strong hat with a broken strap would float for. Because, you know, they were
Why were they testing this? Why aren't they out looking for it instead of testing?
Well, no, because there was no evidence of one, so they were curious how long it would float for. And... actually, it ended up floating for, like, several hours. Like, it was, like, a long time it floated for. So they assumed that because they couldn't find it, that Bobby was actually nowhere near the lake because there was, like, no evidence of the hat.
Interesting.
Anyway, August 26th of 1912, the theory that Bobby had been kidnapped kind of started circling. And it was possible that someone in a small boat could have, like, kidnapped him from the north end of the lake, or someone could have taken him on foot down the trail. So the police in New Orleans were contacted, and they began spreading information about missing Bobby, and Bobby's description was sent out like all across the South. Like it said like from East Texas to Florida.
Aww.
And here's the description. I'll just read it real quick. So it said age 4 years and 4 months, full size for age, stout but not fat, large round blue eyes, light hair and very fair skin with rosy cheeks. Left foot had been burned when as a baby and showed a scar on the big toe, which is somewhat smaller than the big toe on the right foot. Also, that's kind of weird detail to note, but whatever. He was wearing blue rompers and a straw hat without shoes. So this was sent out, and people were, like, desperate to find him. So in the time following the disappearance, the people from Bobby's hometown all rallied together and donated money to be used as a reward. The reward totaled $1,000, which is actually a lot at the time. It's equivalent to $22,000 today. Yeah, so that's, like, a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
Eventually, no one came forward, and the money was returned to the people who donated it. But then, just a week after the money had been returned, there was a major break in the case.
Ooh.
So, April 1913, a group of women living in Hub, Mississippi alerted the Dunbars that they had seen a boy resembling Bobby with an old tinker named William Cantwell Walters. What? Like a tinker, like Tinkerbell.
I just thought of, what was the little bubble?
Yeah, like that guy. I'm glad that that's what you thought of too, because that's what I thought of too.
No, he had like a little, like, oh, bubble.
Yeah.
What was the other one's name?
I don't remember.
Clonk? Chonk?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, they found him with they thought they saw a boy resembling him with an old tinker named William Cantwell Walters. So they attempted to check for the birthmark on his foot, but it was like his foot was too dirty to see if there was a birthmark there. And when they asked William Walters who the kid belonged to, he gave like several inconsistent answers. He was like, oh yeah, it's mine. And then he was like, it's my sister's. And then he just kind of kept continuing with saying who it was, which is like sussy.
Yeah.
William was caught whipping the boy at one point, which gave the local citizens committee like enough authority to detain him and like so they could examine him to see if he was Bobby. I know, this is kind of like all extreme.
This is horrible.
So after examining him, they insisted he was Bobby, but the Dunbars were like still unsure, which like I'd be too. It's like, oh, you just found some random boy in Mississippi, and now we're like supposed to think he's our son. So they actually started to become more certain that he was Bobby after they received photos of him in the mail. And they actually traveled to Mississippi to see him and like see for themselves. So the boy did have a scar on his left foot and a mole on his neck, both of which matched Bobby. However, he refused to answer to the name of Bobby and did not interact with Leslie. Like at all during the first visit. Like she tried to hold him and he was like no. During the second visit, Leslie was I'm sorry, I had a glitch. During the second visit, Leslie was able to give him a bath, which also like that's kind of weird.
Yeah,
that like made me a little uncomfy. Like, what if that's not her son? You're just giving some random little boy a bath.
Yeah.
Like, anyway, she gave him a bath, and after that, she was like, yeah, that's totally Bobby, after he had a bath, which is weird. She fainted in excitement, which, like, also, like, she faints a lot.
Yeah, she needs to get tested or something.
I feel like every time there's, like, a major response, she, like, passes out.
There's actually this thing called narcolepsy, and so...
Why did you say it like that? Like, I don't know what narcolepsy is.
I wasn't clarifying for you. I was clarifying for the listeners. Which I'm sure you guys... I don't know why I phrased it like that. I'm sorry. But anyways, like, and I read this book called The Mysterious Benedict Society. And one of the main guys in it had narcolepsy that was triggered by, like, strong emotion. So maybe she has that.
Oh, maybe. Perhaps. Anyway, after Leslie is like, yeah, this is totally Bobby, William Walters is like, no, this is Bruce Anderson. And Bruce Anderson is actually the son of William Walters' brother and this woman named Julia Anderson. According to Julia, she had given William permission to take Bruce for a few days, but then it ended up being like 15 months that he was gone for.
Excuse me?
And Julia, like, there was, like, it was 1912, so there's no way to, like, figure out, like, where he was or anything. So she was like, yeah, my son was taken, like, 15 months ago. Like, I was like, yeah, you can go take him to see family, but then he was gone for, like, ever.
Oh.
Anyway, so Julia actually traveled all the way to Mississippi to see him, but he didn't interact with her either. And this is, like, very similar to how he responded to Leslie for the first time. Additionally, at that point, he had kind of been taken in by the Dunbars, who had just given him a pony and a bicycle.
Oh!
And so I think he was like, you know, I mean, this is a biased judgment because I kind of see it a different way, but I feel like if you're getting these nice things, like, why would you respond to this other poor lady who
No, literally, like, why would you be like, oh, and also he's like, what, like 6 at this point? 5 or 6?
5, like 4, I think, 4 or 5.
Like, of course he's not gonna go to the woman who's like
Yeah, like I'd stay with the people who get a pony. A fucking pony.
A pony.
Anyway, it also would have been a significant amount of time since Julie had seen Bruce. Actually, it would have been like, if he was Bobby, it would have been less time since he'd seen Leslie than like the amount of time since Julia had seen Bruce.
Oh.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Eventually, a judge ruled that he was Bobby and would go to live with the Dunbars. And Julia had no lawyer, no money to contest this, so the boy lived the rest of his life as Bobby Dunbar until his death in 1966.
That's like really sad.
Yeah. Well, they thought he was Bobby.
Yeah. But I feel bad for the other woman.
I know. All right. Now, here's a little bit of a catch-up on it, because he's actually not Bobby. Okay, in 1999, a granddaughter of the presumed Bobby Dunbar was fascinated by the family story. And, like, I get that. Like, if this was in my family, I'd be fucking obsessed with this shit. Anyway, she spent a lot of time, like, researching and reading articles about the case and was just very curious about if her grandfather was actually Bobby Dunbar. So this ended up causing mass controversy in the family, but she decided to like have a DNA test done. So the DNA test compared her father's DNA, who is Bobby Dunbar Jr., which is also kind of funny because like the fact that he's not even Bobby Dunbar and now there's a junior. Like, anyway, they compared Bobby Dunbar Jr.'s DNA to Alonzo Dunbar's DNA, who's Bobby's brother. So the DNA ended up not being a match, which means all those years that was not Bobby. And so while it was presumed that the boy was actually Bruce Anderson, there's, like, no testing that was ever done to confirm this, which is kind of sad. Like,
that's so sad.
Like, Bruce was just taken away. And so then, like, that brings the question, like, what actually happened to Bobby? And, like, the people kind of circulate, like, you know, that wasn't Bobby, so maybe Bobby actually was kidnapped, and who knows where he went. I feel like more likely he was probably eaten by, like, an animal or, like, drowned in the lake or something, and they just weren't able to find him.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, and then this is just a little final interesting theory, I think. So in an interview with Bobby Dunbar in 1932, obviously not the real
quote-unquote
Bobby Dunbar, he claimed to remember there was another boy with him during his time with William. He said that this other boy had fallen off the wagon, died, and was buried.
Oh, God.
So while this theory could totally be true, it could also be like a memory of suggestion, because when William was on trial for kidnapping, it was what his prosecution had kind of suggested, that there was like two boys.
Oh, yeah.
And so that could be a memory of suggestion. I don't really know how much he was around the trial, so I don't know like how much that's possible, but it's definitely possible. Also, this is what I actually thought was really interesting. It could be like a psychological rationalization of the death of his time as Bruce and like becoming Bobby. I thought that was like really interesting. Like,
that is.
It was like suggested, I guess, like as a way to cope. Like he imagined that there was two boys, and like
just the death of his past self.
Exactly. Isn't that kind of interesting?
That is really interesting.
Well, like there's interesting like ways that children cope with things, and like that is like one of the possible ways that he ended up like coping with this situation.
Which is really fascinating.
I'm like really interested by that. But who knows? All we know is that whoever the fuck lived his life as Bobby Dunbar was not Bobby Dunbar. Which is kind of fucked. Like that family was just like, oh, he's our son.
Let's give him a pony.
Also, kind of interesting that they had like the matching moles and shit.
I know.
Like I'm a little intrigued by that.
And they look similar enough to the point where like
maybe it's one of those things, you know how they say like out there in the world somewhere there's like somebody
that looks doppelganger?
There's somebody that looks just like you. I wonder if this was a weird situation where like their lives happen to overlap to a point where like it caused like an it's
That'd be so crazy.
I feel like that's
a rift in the Matrix.
You know, dude, I was literally just gonna say that. Okay, that's weird. Anyway, this was the mystifying disappearance and false return of Bobby Dunbar. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at tgic.podcast. Bye!